Right, members, it's 2 o'clock. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Planning Committee meeting. Item 1 on the agenda for today is apologies for absence.
We've got apologies. We've got apologies from Councillor Heather Liggett. Councillor Mark Foster is here as substitute, and we've got apologies from Councillor David Cheetham, and we've got Councillor Kevin Gillett here as substitute.
Thank you for that. Right, item 2 is declaration of interest. Do any members have any interest to declare? No, thank you very much. Item 3, declaration of predetermination. Do any members have any predetermination issues to declare? No, thank you very much. Right, we'll get straight on to item 5 of the agenda. Item 4 of the agenda, which is minutes of the last meeting, which was held on the 19th of May 2026, which was conducted by the Vice Chair, as there was only one item that I couldn't participate in. So, are members happy to record that that those minutes are correct? Yep. Thank you, members. Right, item 5, which is application number NED 24/00473/MFL Elmwood and Heath. The first application is in respect of land to the east of Central Street at Elmwood. I'm now going to hand you over to the planning officer to give us a brief description of the application. Over to you, Graham.
Thanks, Chair. So hopefully everybody can see the screen's all right in the presentation. So yeah, the first item is reference 24/00473/MFL, and this is application seeks consent for the construction of 59 dwellings at Central Street, Homewood. Late representations have been received and are set out in the summary update report circulated to members yesterday. They don't raise any new matters. There was a couple of points to do with details that have been submitted, but I've had to update a few of the conditions if members are minded to approve the scheme. So hopefully that's self-explanatory in the report. So members are asked to consider an application which lies outside the settlement development limit and within the countryside, resulting in identified landscape harm. However, this harm must be weighed against the benefits, most notably the delivery of 59 dwellings comprising 100% affordable social rent housing, which directly responds to an evidence need and is afforded significant weight. In addition, technical consultees raised no objections subject to conditions, confirming that impacts in relation to highways drainage, ecology and residential amenity are acceptable and can be mitigated. So the planning balance for members turns on whether the identified countryside harm and reduced infrastructure contributions due to viability constraints are outweighed by the delivery of affordable housing and the wider benefits of sustainable development. So this next slide, so this illustrates the site shaded in yellow. The settlement of Homewood sits to the west, the recreation ground to the northeast. You've got the Five Pits Trail, which we walked along a short section earlier today, running from north-east down to the south-west. The site can be accessed from Chesterfield Road to the north or Tibshelf Road to the south, and then through the roads on that estate onto Central Street. So this is a more zoomed-in view of the site, and you can see the relationship the site will have with the existing development to the west. You've got woodland to the south and east of the site, and as we saw on site earlier today, we've got a strong band of mature trees along that north-east boundary between the site and the rec ground. So this is the red line location plan submitted by the applicant. So the site covers an area of, I think, about 1.8, 1.9 hectares. So this is the site layout, which includes a mix of 1, 2 and 3 bed dwellings. The road into the site extends from Central Street to the west and extends through the site in an S shape. The proposal is predominantly outward facing, includes connectivity to the recreation ground and the Five Pits Trail. And a modest area of public open space is proposed in the southeast corner of the site. So this is hopefully you can make this out, but this is just a useful plan to show some of the compensatory planting that's proposed, mostly down in this southern corner. It might be quite difficult to work out, but there's also just highlights the retention and set off distance of the development to the trees along that eastern boundary. This is a few of the house types that are proposed. So the top drawing is the 3-bed 5-person. The next one is the 3-bed 4-person, and then there's the 1-bed property. So there's a few more house types in the officer report if members want to take a look at that. So I've just included a couple of photos. So this is taken from Central Street looking back towards the application site. This is taken from the council's garage site looking in a northeasterly direction with the rec site behind the trees in the background. So this is taken from the southern portion of the site looking back to properties on Springfield Road. And this photo is taken from the middle of the recreation site looking back towards the application site. Members that attended the site visit will see the tree on the left-hand side of that picture. That's a good reference point from where we were earlier today. And Chair, that concludes the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. Right, we have 5 speakers registered on this application, the first of which is local ward member, Councillor Susie Cornwell. If you'd like to come up to the desk, Susie. You've got 3 minutes when you're ready.
Okay. Is it on? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So, Chair and members, thank you for inviting me. I want to speak plainly about the real-world consequences this development will have on Homewood, on our roads, on our already stretched local services, and on the community I represent as a district councillor. Access to this site relies on Central Street, Mornington Road and Springfield Road, roads that are narrow, congested and simply not designed for this level of or type of traffic that they already carry. At the Planning Committee's site visit this morning, when the roads are at their quietest, you didn't see the true picture. These streets were built at a time when households did not all have cars. Today we live in a multi-household car place, about 12 cars for every 10 homes. For a development this size, that's easily about 70 vehicle movements a day, not the 29, 26 trips that highways have suggested. The public transport in Homewood is poor and reliable. This means that residents will be overwhelmingly car dependent, which is directly contrary to national and local planning policy. And Highways assessment simply doesn't reflect the lived reality of these roads. Mornington and Springfield roads are not marked as not suitable for heavy goods vehicle, yet the construction traffic and the heavy plant machinery that will be needed will be using them. So there is no credible plan on how this can be done safely. And then there's the pressure on the infrastructure in our local services. As you know, Homewood has absorbed around 1,000 new homes in recent years. Our infrastructure is at breaking point. The traffic from this development will add pressure to junction 29 of the M1 and the A61 at 7 at Temple Normanton. And both of these already experience gridlock due to all the recent developments. With our schools, our pupils travel to Tibshell School, a journey requiring 2 buses. And again, this pushes families towards car use, and the Highways trip analysis doesn't account for this. Stafford Health have openly stated it is struggling to maintain its 4 sites across the area. So without the significant 106 contributions, existing residents will suffer. And then there's the drainage and the sewerage, poor surface water drainage. There are natural ponds that have formed on this site. The cricket pitch and the Five Pits Trail car park flood regularly. And as the local councillor, I'm already dealing with drainage facilities about a mile away because of the planning that has been descended on Homewood. And on Tibshelf Road, I had a distressing case of raw sewerage running through a resident's home due to the overuse of sewers. So this plan does not adequately account for surface water drainage or sewerage risks. So the negative impact is cumulative. This scheme would not arrive in a vacuum. It will add more traffic to unsuitable roads, more pressure to services already struggling, and strain on an infrastructure that will affect the local residents' everyday lives.
Thank you, Councillor Cornwell. Do members have any questions for the Speaker? Yeah, Councillor Hancock.
Susie, thank you. I'm glad you actually picked up, because one of the things I asterisked was that number of vehicle movements, which to me is ludicrous. I mean, obviously, using your experience of current usage, what proportion of children would you say actually do catch the bus versus what will? Because a lot of these obviously are family homes, they're going to have children.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you can go past the bus stop in the morning at school time, and I'd say there's about 10 to 15 kids waiting for the school buses.
Yeah, so that's a heck of a lot that
Yeah.
just having to go by.
Absolutely.
No, thank you.
Councillor Gillett.
A little bit on the infrastructure issues around schooling, around health. Obviously, your knowledge is anecdotal rather than factual based, but do you want to expand on that further? What are the problems at Heath Primary School in terms of getting children in at the moment, for example? And again,
Sorry, I can barely hear you, Nigel. Sorry, Kevin.
do you want to expand on what you've said with regards to the infrastructure problems in the village? Because obviously that was one of the issues that Graham outlined when he introduced the report. And it's a key factor in the report as well. So I appreciate your comments are anecdotal based on what people tell you rather than based on some of the factual evidence that authorities may have, but it would be just helpful for me if you could expand on what you've said so far.
So Stafford Health, the local healthcare, did a report in 2017, and they've not updated that report since. And they were struggling to recruit GPs, and they were struggling with and they were struggling to expand. Once they were recruiting GPs, they didn't have enough space for all the residents that needed appointments. So they were looking at building bigger sites. Homewood was not one of the sites that they felt that they could build on, so they would be building on Tibshelf, because that's the only site where they've got spare room. So if there's no Section 106 coming from this application, that won't be going towards building that that extra space at Tibshelf Stafford. But also, we're going to have increased people that are going to need those GP space, those doctor spaces. So the more residents that you bring into Homewood, the more it's going to increase on the Homewood site, which does struggle. I mean, I'll be honest, I got an appointment the other day, which I couldn't believe, but I've known to have to wait a month for an appointment at Stafford. So that's the health, and obviously I'm concerned about the lack of Section 106 that might be coming from this application towards the GPs. I'm sure all of you have heard me talk about Junction 29. Of the M1. I mean, I've lived here for 20 years and I can barely I know what time not to go in the morning because I could be queuing for 20 minutes. What I haven't been talking about so much to you guys is the junction at the A617 at Temple Normanton. And that is equally chocker from about 7:30 onwards. I mean, I used to go to the gym in the morning. There's just absolutely no point unless I can go to the gym at 7 o'clock in the morning, because I will be queuing for about an hour and a half. Sorry, the queues at Temple Normanton are about an hour and a half. So you're adding more transport to an existing system that's not already there. The school's buses are not very adequate, and the buses to Homewood aren't adequate anyway. So any development that's going to take place in Homewood is going to be very dominated by cars. So you're going to pile on all the cars and all the issues I've talked about. I do want to talk about the drainage and the sewerage. This has become a really hot topic. Grassmore, Corbriggs have always reported drainage problems, and when it floods there. Now that is not in Homewood. But what's happened is we've been building and building and building in Homewood, and it's getting worse in other areas. So you're not seeing it here, you're feeling it there. But I have to say, this sewerage issue that I saw in this lass's house on Tibshelf Road, so we're talking 200 metres away from this proposed development. This was caused because of overuse of sewerage. The sewerage system had not been upgraded. And I'm really sorry, guys, but I'm going to say it. She had tampons floating around her house, amongst all other stuff. And Yorkshire Watered, because it was a time when we were all flooded, when there was heavy rains, it wasn't a priority for Yorkshire Water. So it took her 2 weeks to get all this stuff out of her house. It was absolutely disgusting. And these are the things that residents will be dealing with if you build more houses yet in Homewood. And I haven't touched on the 5 pits because that will be coming up later. So thank you for the question.
Thank you. Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor. I take your point about the impact on the negative impact on highway and pedestrian safety that you mentioned. Is there any evidence, much like we've heard from the council here, is there any evidence, any reports to suggest this is the case? We've got a traffic impact assessment from the applicant to consider, and we've got the highways report to consider, which doesn't suggest any negative impact.
No, because they're not local residents.
So when we're, as a planning committee, that's what we consider as evidence, and that's what we'd look at. So it's much the same thing. I've always, on this committee, I've always heard hearsay and anecdotal evidence. But when we look at rejecting, right at the other end of this, at the end of this process, when we consider rejecting a proposal, what we have to look at is evidence. So it's your chance to say here now, because you won't be able to come back later on, to say what evidence do we have to look at and what can we consider as a planning committee when it comes to that impact on pedestrian safety and travel, because we've got evidence as it is, but we've got no other evidence to the contrary.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
All I can say is one of the things I have pleaded with the planning officer, absolutely pleaded, is that the site visit took place when the cars were parked, having returned from work at 7 o'clock at night. I have been pleading with him ever since this application came to light, even before it was an application and it was a pre-app. I said, whatever you do, that site visit needs to be at 7 o'clock at night when all the cars are parked. Because once you see where all the cars are parked, you will see that it is just not fit for purpose for any more traffic. Because it's like, I mean, I'm going to use a very unprofessional word, because this is an unprofessional answer in the sense that I live there. I walk that street. It's where I go on my morning walk and my morning run, yeah? And it's higgledy-piggledy. The way people park and the narrowness of the roads, you can barely get through them. You can't get lorries through them. So God knows how they're going to actually build this site if it does get passed, because you just can't. This is lived experience. And I'm really sorry, but highways don't come out of their little offices. They don't have lived experience, and the developer obviously wants this to happen because it's good for them. So I'm telling you what lived experience. I can't give you facts and figures in the same way that they can, because I haven't got that skill behind me. I can tell you what it's like when you go and walk there at 7 o'clock at night. It is absolutely jam-packed with other vehicles, and it is not fit for purpose for further road traffic.
Thank you. Thank you. Any further questions? No? If you'd like to retake your seat on, Susie,
Okay.
please. Thank you. Next speaker on this item is Ward Member Councillor Leastone.
Hi, good afternoon. Can you hear me okay? Yeah? Okay. Chair members, thank you again for inviting us to speak. I'm just going to summarise the major concerns raised by the parish councils of Heath, Elmwood and Old Hucknall in relation to this application for development on the East of Central Street. First, the proposal is fundamentally contrary to the North East Derbyshire local plan. The site lies outside of the settlement development limit and is therefore classified as countryside, a fact acknowledged by all parties. As the parish council stated, it's simply not suitable or a sustainable location for this type of development. Local plan's housing requirement for Homewood has already been met with 484 homes delivered or approved. No further windfall sites are required, and the applicant's attempt to classify this as a rural exception site fails to meet the policy tests. The housing needs survey used to justify the exception site claim is unreliable. As the parish council notes, 1,580 questionnaires were sent out and 122 were returned, response of under 8%, with key groups such as private renters significantly underrepresented. This is not robust evidence of proven need. Second, the development would cause significant and permanent harm to the landscape and character of the village. This site is a valued open greenfield area, providing informal recreation, visual amenity and a rural setting that residents strongly identify with. The parish council states that the proposal represents unacceptable urban encroachment into a prominent, open and attractive countryside area. Third, there are serious ecological deficiencies and risks. Hucknall's Parish Council's ecological review highlights multiple failures in the applicant's environmental assessments. Overall, the ecological appraisal doesn't meet the SEAM standards and cannot support a sound planning decision. Fourth, the proposal would worsen already unsafe highway and pedestrian conditions. Central streets surrounding roads are narrow, congested, have limited footways. The Parish Council highlights HGV restrictions on both Mornington Road and Springfield Road, which have unresolved concerns about how construction traffic would reach the site safely. Fifth, the development would then place unacceptable pressure on already overstretched local services, as Councillor Cornwell's just touched on, including schools, healthcare and drainage. In a village that's absorbed already around 1,000 homes, Homewood is a level 2 settlement with limited facilities, and this proposal would push it beyond sustainable capacity. Finally, this is not a sustainable development. Public transport is infrequent. With no reliable service after 6 p.m. or on Sundays, residents would be overwhelmingly car dependent, contrary to both national and local policy. In conclusion, both parish councils, ward members and the wider community are united in their view that this proposal is harmful, unsustainable and non-compliant with policy. As the parish council plainly states, the proposed development is not a suitable location, nor does it represent sustainable development. For those reasons, I strongly urge refusal.
Thank you, Councillor Stone.
Thank you.
Do members have any questions? Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that. I'd like to pick up on at least one of your points. So I know you probably would like to tell us about many, and perhaps other members have got questions. But looking at the summary of your report here, we note you challenge the local housing needs survey, but can you tell us a bit more about what is the failure, it's written down here, to consider forthcoming affordable housing from allocated sites?
Yeah.
Have you got any more information you can share with us? Because you say that the current survey is considered unreliable and flawed.
Yeah, that's in terms of the responses from members of the public who were issued with the questionnaire. And I think if you look at the volume of housing that is has recently been built in the area, all of which have affordable housing proportions on there, I honestly I can't understand why or where the actual need comes from for an additional 59 properties. There's, you know, well over 1,000 new homes being built, and a large percentage of that, well, not a large percentage, but a percentage of that is affordable. And with the very limited response from the forms that came back, I'm not sure how that would justify any need for any more affordable housing.
And that, excuse me, if I may, and that is in relation to the local need for the Homewood and surrounding district.
Yes, based on what we've seen, the new applications that are ongoing, and what we've seen in the recent local plan updates for proposed new sites as well.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Gillett.
A lot of the questions are asking you to provide facts and figures that I think are probably beyond your knowledge, expert knowledge in that sense. But the actual value the community places on that piece of land and the usage of it probably isn't, because that's just subjective for people, and you clearly know the area very well. Do you want to expand on what you've said so far to tell us and explain to us how important that piece of land is to that local community?
Yeah, I mean, having sort of lived most of my life in Homewood, born and raised there, that particular piece of land has always been sort of a well-used recreational area that links both the recreational grounds, the football pitch, the cricket pitch, the 5-pitch trail. It's always been there, as long as I can remember, in terms of that sort of countryside link. When the industrial estates were built back in the 70s, it was part of the sort of green gap between the industrial units, which is used as a sound barrier to limit the noise and to make sure that there's no sort of encroachment into the existing residential areas from industrial noise and units. And all that's going to happen is if you take that away, as we saw on the site visit today, what you're going to take away is a huge chunk of green space that's used currently by all residents at that end of the village. You're going to take that away and replace it with more tarmac and brick, and just remove that forever. Once it's gone, and you're not going to get that back. And I think putting a little footpath in between new builds and the 5-pitch trail, and the same on the other side to join up to the recreation ground, it doesn't really cut it in terms of, once that area's gone, that area of green space is gone, it's gone forever, and you're never getting it back.
Question.
Yep.
Obviously, we've heard from Councillor Cornwall about the impact on the infrastructure and on the roads. You, for obvious reasons, I suspect, didn't focus on that. But is there anything based on your experience or knowledge that you think might help us and that you want to tell us?
Yeah, I think Councillor Foster's question to Councillor Cornwall in regards to the evidence, the factual evidence, which isn't there. We're not experts in that field. But I think, again, like Councillor Cornwall says, that the lived experience, if you look at only recently, maybe a couple of weeks ago, National Grid had to attend site to install some new cabling, which I think we saw evidence of today during the site visit. And to enable the contractors to get on site there, I was sent photographs of diggers and heavy machinery using the footpaths to get from the main road to the site, and there's photographs there which I can provide. But that's the same when we went to site this morning. You can quite clearly see that the roads aren't wide enough for vehicles to park actually on the road outside properties. Nearly every vehicle that was parked around that estate this morning was parked on the footpath. And when you have, like on Central Street, when we were there this morning, you've got 2 cars on one side and 1 car on the other, you're not getting anything through there at all. And that's at a time, as pointed out to us by officers, that's at a time when construction may be happening during the day when people are at work. And access would be greatly limited due to that. And what are they going to do? Go door knocking every time a truck or a lorry or a piece of equipment comes to get residents to move the cars? It's just impractical. The width of those roads just simply isn't enough to accommodate. It's one of the main reasons that we pushed the county council to get the restriction signs on both of those roads, on Mornington and Springfield Road, to restrict heavy goods vehicles from using those roads, because it's just not practical. It's simply, you can't access that with heavy goods vehicles. So how construction traffic and delivery vehicles for that site would access it, I have no idea, because Central Street is actually the only way onto the site. And for those of you that were there this morning, you will have seen how restrictive that is.
Thank you. Any other questions for Councillor Stone? No? Thank you. Thank you. Would like to retake your seat? Right, next speaker on this is Craig Hill. Would like to come and take a seat, Craig? You've got 3 minutes when you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Members of the Council. One of the things I wanted to bring to the attention is just there hasn't been much of an ecological survey done. But bats are present on site. I sat outside the last 2 nights at dusk and I could see them flitting around from either the trees, the established trees on the side, or further back, there certainly are there. There are intermittent ponds that are there through most of the spring, autumn and winter. I personally have seen newts there as well. I don't know if they're great crested newts, but there is a lot of wildlife that is there. I take my little boy out to go and hunt for little things. Access as well has been touched on quite often, but part of the land in the bottom left-hand corner of the proposed development isn't actually owned by the development, it's owned by the council. So I don't know how they're going to build on something they don't even own yet. I've got drainage has been touched on as well, but also some personal experience. I live right at the top of the development, the house is there next to the care homes. It regularly does at the moment flood, and we get water ingress through our garden, and it just runs straight down the hill towards the main road. I don't see any mitigation really put in on that end of development at all. You know, if it's not soaking away when there's a load of dirt and ground, how's it going to soak away when it's tarmac and pavement? I don't know how it's going to work. I just want to question the viability of the whole development as well. The Section 106 asked for nearly 726,000, and they said they can only provide a maximum of 190, or the development is not viable. So why should residents, ward members, the public in general have to subsidise a development that they're saying, well, we can't give any more because it's not viable? I don't see how that's going to work. And my last point really is just talk about the care homes are there. There are end-of-life patients, dementia patients, cancer patients. My own father-in-law was in there at the end of his life, and it's a peaceful, relaxing environment for them they can actually enjoy. With pollution and noise and dust, that's going to massively impact care home residents, and that's not something that's really been thought of. Or you can put mitigation for dust, but you know, my father-in-law was able to look out of his room onto a nice green area with wildlife and horses and kids playing at the end of his life. He wouldn't be able to have that if there's just houses there. So, thank you.
Thank you. Do members have any questions for the speaker? Councillor Hancock.
Thanks, Chair. It's just one of clarity, to be truthful, because I think I know what you meant about with Susie bringing up earlier about sewage flooding.
Yes.
Yours is surface water flooding,
Yes,
what you're
surface water,
referring to. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. No further questions. So can
Thank you.
take your seat? Thank you. Right, the next speaker on this item is David Bathney. Would like to come and take a seat.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Got 3 minutes when you're ready. Thanks.
Yeah. Chair members, thank you. I want to highlight the major ecological shortcomings in this application, which together demonstrate that it is not policy compliant or environmentally safe and not ready for determination. Firstly, the ecological assessment is incomplete and missing critical baseline information. The DESS study fails to identify priority habitats, such as the woodland that lies immediately adjacent to the site, and also the pond that is on the site. These omissions undermine the entire impact assessment, particularly on the wildlife and the pollution risks. No bird scoping survey and no breeding bird surveys have been undertaken. Guidance requires up to 6 surveys between March and July. The DESS study even identified a Schedule 1 species barn owl, yet no reference to habitat suitability or loss of foraging habitat is mentioned. Only 2 outdated bat activity surveys have been completed. The required Spring 2024 survey is missing. The site was assessed to support local value for foraging and commuting bats, especially Myotis species. Yet the presence of priority habitat woodland and 2 foraging ponds nearby have not been factored in. The bat roost assessment was carried out in June, a suboptimal month. Reptile surveys were carried out in rapid succession, increasing the risk of false negatives. The pond was not surveyed at all. Habitat assessments are incomplete. Quadrant data for grassland is missing. Species per metre data was not collected, and as the document states, it would not have been possible to generate a species list to inform the assessment. This alone invalidates the BNG calculation. The application fails to demonstrate biodiversity net gain. The report confirms that a 10% gain cannot be achieved, and yet does not show how the 10 BNG principles are being applied. Under the Environment Act 2021 and NPPF Section 157, planning permission cannot be granted without this. Fifthly, the ecological impact assessment is not compliant with CIEEM standards. As the document notes, the report does not adequately consider the construction and operational impacts. There is no plan for the knotweed, substantial amount of knotweed, which is present on the site, which has now actually spread onto council property. And also there is no overreaching ecological mitigation strategy. There is no secure plan for wildlife or habitat creation, nor any 30-year management plan as required for BNG delivery. In summary, the ecological evidence is incomplete, the surveys are inadequate, key species have not been assessed, and the proposal fails to meet mandatory BNG requirements. On ecological grounds alone, this application is not fit for approval and must be refused. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any members have any questions? No? Right, if you'd like to retake your seat. Thank you. Right, the next speaker on this is Amanda Hill. Hi Amanda, you've got 3 minutes when you're ready.
I'm speaking as a resident. I am in the house next door to this potential development. The health impacts are going to affect the residents of the area. In my house alone, I've got my husband that has COPD. I have a daughter that's asthmatic. There's another neighbour across the road, her daughter is also asthmatic. And the lady across the road also works nights in a hospital. So the transport in and out is going to be quite disruptive and cause health implications. I also want to speak about also the knotweed. Since National Grid come to do the upgrade, they actually cut down the knotweed and now it's spread. So there's a bigger bush of knotweed, shall we say. Oh yeah, the effects on the roads as well. They are really narrow roads. And I was coming home from work one night. I was only in a car. I was coming up Springfield Road. I actually clipped a curb to miss a parked car and I actually burst a tyre. That's how narrow the roads are. So bringing trucks up and down there, they are literally just going to be going up the curbs. And I live in the house on Central Street and I can imagine they're going to be knocking on my door to move my car to access daily. And also I want to just back Susie up with the school. I have a daughter who goes to Tibshelf School. She will not catch the bus because it's too full. So I have to take her in the car. If she was reliant on the school bus and she missed it, there's no public service to Tibshelf at all. So if they are accessing secondary schools, they will have to use a car.
Is that complete? Yeah. Thank you very much. Do members have any questions for the speaker? No. Oh, sorry, Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Chair. Just to confirm, you live adjacent to the development?
Yeah, I'm right next to the site and the end house.
Do you have any on site parking?
No.
No. So you rely on the road parking?
Yeah. Me and my husband park outside the house, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
Ready to take your seat. Thanks. Right, the next speaker is the agent, Jeremy Williams. Would you like to come and take a seat, please? Three minutes when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, members, my name is Jeremy Williams and I'm a Director of ID Planning, acting for the applicant. The application before you has been subject to a rigorous consultation process, which has culminated in your officers recommending approval. It's not my intention to highlight all the points covered in your officer's report, as it sets out why planning permission should be approved, but I would highlight certain matters. The proposed development would provide 100% affordable housing and is promoted as an exception site under policy LC3 for affordable housing. As your officer report states, the proposal meets all relevant criteria under that policy. From the evidence presented, including your council's housing needs assessment study in October 2024, your officer's report concludes that a consistent and robust picture of unmet affordable housing need is presented at both the local and district level, with the proposed tenure being 100% social rent being the most critical tenure required in addressing identified housing need. Your officer report concludes the proposal would be a direct response to a clearly evidenced and acute local housing need. The application submission and your officer's report addresses all other aspects of the exceptions policy LC3 and concludes no material conflict arising. The application would provide sustainable development. Homewood is identified in your local plan as a level 2 settlement and therefore considered to have good sustainability credentials to accommodate growth. The site would be located a short walk from existing local shops and services and bus stops on Heath Road. In addition, the proposal provides sustainable drainage with the use of on-site soakaways for a large part. In dealing with general design and amenity, the site is well contained in visual terms, being framed by residential uses on two sides, a recreational area to the east and woodland to the south. The design and layout have been the subject of an extensive discussions with your officers and county highways to provide a well-designed housing layout with a reduction in the number of dwellings from the 64 originally proposed to 59 dwellings. The application is supported by a full suite of technical reports, robustly addressing all other relevant matters, including residential amenity, highway safety, drainage, land contamination and ecology. We consider the proposal offers significant benefits, including the delivery of a 100% affordable housing scheme with social rent housing that would be secured in perpetuity in an area with a clearly evidenced and acute local housing need. It would meet the objectives of the MPPF and your local plan and comply with policy LC3. Against this background, I would ask that you agree with your officer's recommendation and resolve to grant planning permission for this much needed development in Homewood. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Members, do you have any questions for the agent? Councillor Gillett.
In terms of need, I think you're providing 2 and 3 bedroom properties as part of the plan. Is there any need for larger properties than that in the area? And if there is there any reason why you chose not to meet that part of the need?
In terms of the housing mix, that was something kind of looked at with the RP, who would be taking forward the units. So it was an element that was looked into in terms of what the sort of composition might be, and that had an influencing factor on what they identified the need to be in terms of requirements for that particular site, and in the context, I guess, of the social rent, in terms of the 100% social rent tenure being taken forward. But that came from that discussions with the RP.
Does that mean there is a need for 4 bedrooms? The applicant's just chosen not to meet that aspect
No,
of the need?
I think the applicants looked at it in terms of what the requirement would be for the need they've identified, and therefore put the housing mix in with a 1-bed, 2-bed and 3-bed. That affordable housing and social rent.
In terms of the infrastructure, obviously the development places additional pressure on the infrastructure. That's highlighted in the report.
Yeah.
We've heard some anecdotal comments, but some of that is supported by, if not the report itself, some of the documents behind the report. So if you look at the County Council letter, that highlights the problems with regards to the schools, and that they are already over capacity and will remain over capacity or continue to be significantly over capacity irrespective of this development. Obviously, the applicant's contributions towards mitigating against that is limited because of the viability of the scheme, which suggests that there's a high risk that there may even be no contribution at the end of the day if something goes wrong unexpectedly. Do you want to comment on those risks and the pressures that this development is putting on that community?
Yeah, I mean, I think the context of the application has always been the need for the affordable housing in terms of that requirement to help meet that local need. So I think the the assessment on the viability side, I mean, the MPPF clearly doesn't want to render developments unviable and unable to come forward to meet needs. So the viability assessment was carried out in terms of looking at the planning obligations and what could be afforded, if you like, as part of the overall scheme. That went through a very detailed process with your council's advisors in terms of the consultant and also a QS, so a viability consultant and a QS. So I went through that whole process to try and understand what level of contribution could be afforded. And the outcome of that process was the number, obviously, you see in the officer's report of 190,000. So it will still provide a contribution towards services and some of those elements and the obligations. And from reading the officer's report, it's clearly open to you members to look at how that amount might be, if you like, divvied up, for want of better expression. But I think it's obviously an obligation that's there in terms of the contribution that would be made. I think also there is a review mechanism that would be included in the Section 106 agreement as well. So that would be in there. The officer refers to that, I think, at 730, paragraph 7.37 of his report, from memory. But that would go into the Section 106 agreement, so that there could be a review taking place in the future, that were values to increase or things to increase and more obligations or contributions could be afforded. And there would be that review mechanism in place in the 106 agreement.
Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Chair. Following up on Councillor Gillett's comment, looking at the viability review mechanism and assessment, there are comments in there about abnormal development costs and the nature and scale of such, reducing the amount of available Section 106 contributions from initially about 900 and something thousand, then down to 700 and something thousand, now down to 190,000. The Parish Council says that no other sites have been considered for this development. Were any other sites looked at? And if so, particularly were sites with less abnormal construction costs looked at, so that the required Section 106 monies could be delivered to offset the harm of the development?
Yes, I mean, in terms of the policy LC3, there is a criteria to look at whether there are any other alternative sites within the settlement boundary. So that assessment was carried out, and if you look at our planning statement, we have a section on there dealing with that aspect. I think there were 3 small sites, I can't remember exactly where they were, but they were a lot smaller than the development site we're looking at, as well as the allocated sites as well, but they're all coming forward. The planning officer deals with the allocated sites in his committee report. He sets them out in terms of where they've got to. But yes, the planning statement did look at, apologies, I can't remember the precise names, but they were about, from memory, about 0.4 hectare, I think, or 0.6, or that sort of order. So we did look around the settlement at other alternative sites.
Thank you. That's it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I've got one question for you, just regarding the affordability. You've obviously gone down the social rented sector. Is there any reason you've gone specific for that? Because you must be receiving some grant funding to achieve this this scheme, rather than actually building a mix of housing that would be more in keeping. Can you just wait? Your microphone's not on.
Sorry.
Martin. It's on there, right? Okay, sorry.
Sorry, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, in terms of the RP that we're dealing with in relation to the development, they were looking for that sort of 100% social rent. I think as well, when you look at the evidence from your housing policy officer as well, he supports that in terms of what he's saying in terms of the consultee responses and the committee report as well. It's a kind of I suppose in terms of the discount, it's between 50 and 60% discounted, so it provides for a wide range of households and their requirements. And we are also agreeing to it's the choice letting system, I think, the council run as well. So that again will ensure some local connection, if you like, with Homewood. So yeah, it's come around from a number of factors, but yes, partly the RP and partly also the level of need and the type of need that exists that's been identified.
Okay, thank you. And one more question, just regarding the HNA report, which obviously identifies the need for 4-bedroomed housing in Homewood, which I noticed this application doesn't provide any, which is what Councillor Gillett kind of mentioned. Is there any reason you've not actually taken that on board and developed any four-bedroom properties on this site?
Yes, I think again, as I said, it was in discussions with the RP and looking at the housing mix and how they perceive the need and how they identified the need and what they felt in terms of the housing mix that should be provided in order to meet that requirement. So that's really where it came from.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? No, if you'd like to retake your seat.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right then, members, it's now over to asking the questions of officers. So has anybody got any questions to ask the officers? Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to compliment the officers for making all the effort to bring this application to this point. I understand quite a lot of discussions have taken place to prepare the application before us. But I would comment, I have personally seen the parking situation on this site. I used to drive around there quite a lot, and I took the liberty of going the other day to have a look as well. So if somebody parks on the double yellows at one of the entrances to the site, you can't even get in the site. So I've got some sympathy for the view that what we saw today was a quiet period. But my main question is following on from Councillor Cornwall and Mr Hill's comments, and it again reverts back to the Section 106 agreement. This is a technical question for officers. Bearing in mind the big reduction from 950,000 to 725 to 190, can you enlighten us members as to how that limited Section 106 money is actually offsetting the harm of the development in the countryside? Please.
Thanks, Councillor Baker. So yeah, what I've tried to do in the report is set out the kind of process that officers have undertaken. So we start off with the ask, and then we have to discount those that don't meet the test. So we've discounted those, and then we come up with the next figure, and then we put that to the developer as to why they can't deliver that level of financial contribution, and they've advised that it wasn't viable. They've submitted a viability appraisal, and we've had a third-party appraisal review that. So in long discussions with the applicant and our experts, you know, we've come to that agreement that that combined value of 190,000 was the kind of the point that was the maximum kind of viability of that proposal. So what we've got is that the ask is over 700,000, but we're getting nearly 200. So that does weigh against the scheme. You know, that does weigh against the scheme, and that officers in the assessment, I hope I've made that clear, that the weight of social 100% affordable housing weighs heavily in favour of the scheme, and that is perhaps given more weight than us trying to get a scheme. You know, if we developed a different scheme which had maybe market housing, you know, we may have been able to generate more Section 106 monies, and that is something that we did take up with the developer, and that was discounted for whatever reason. So maybe that the RP is not able to deliver market housing on that site. So, you know, that has been explored to try and get the maximum kind of 106 monies out of the scheme, and this is where we've ended up.
I don't fault your reasoning. You're constrained by law, you're constrained by the NPPF. I just wanted that airing, that it doesn't seem to me that that's, as you've sort of alluded to, really doing much offsetting the harm. The benefit comes from the social housing if members decide that's the benefit. And I think, thanks for your clarity, that's what I wanted bringing out. Thank you, Chair.
So that's a question of judgment for the committee to decide on. You've weighed it up in the balance and come down one way. Are you saying that the committee could weigh it up in the balance and come down a different way?
If I can just come in on that, Chair. I think to try and relate to both points that are being raised by Councillors Baker and Gillett there, really. I think the more normal circumstance, the more common circumstance, is where the level of affordable housing provision is actually reduced in a viability argument. We've kind of got the reverse of that here, where obviously it's 100% affordable housing scheme, but then the applicant's case, and like Graham said, we have had that independently verified. the margins that that scheme is producing at social rent mean that the actual Section 106 pot is reduced. So yeah, it's kind of the reverse of the more frequent situation, if you like. And then in weighing that up as officers, and like Graham said, we did probe different scenarios that might have changed that balance. But where we got to was there is quite a weight of evidence behind a need for affordable housing. I mean, yes, district-wide, but also specifically in Homewood. So policy LC3 talks about the need for the applicant to submit a housing needs survey. And some members will be aware of an application that was in Unston about a year and a half ago. And that situation resulted in legal advice being taken on this issue. And, you know, the housing needs assessment for the council produces one figure for Homewood, 10 in total, 8 social rent per annum. The applicant's housing needs survey is a higher figure, but they're both about the same age, the two reports, and obviously, as Graham's put in the report, the sort of a small c conservative balance of 15 a year we think is a really robust position in terms of evidence-based needs. So the long and short of it is we've had to grapple with the fact that from a housing need point of view, there clearly is a need for affordable housing provision in Homewood and Heath at a parish level. It's then about how do we maximise the benefits that can offset that, and in this case it's fallen short from the figure of the 700,000, which we felt was the robust starting point. So just to be clear, in terms of how we got from the circa 900 to the circa 700, that basically is the contribution requested by Chesterfield Royal Hospital, and the issue with that is compliance with the CIL regs, to use in short, Community Infrastructure Levy regs, whereby the Chesterfield Royal, and this is an ongoing discussion with them because we want to get to a point where they can be robust in this case, but effectively their arguments in terms of trying to attribute certain impacts of a specific development to their request are not robust enough from the planning authority's point of view. Thank you, Chair.
I don't think that's my part of the question. It's absolutely clear. Officers have reached their judgment, but we are open if we want, and I'm not saying I have. I just want to know what I can and can't do. I could, or other members of the committee could reach a completely different judgment based on those facts. Is that correct? That's what you're saying.
I suppose where I went in terms of the need is I think we're going to find it difficult to make a case that the applicant hasn't demonstrated a strong need for affordable housing. And so in terms of where the actual pot is allocated, the 190,000, I think obviously, yes, that's a judgment for members. I think you know, maybe quite early in the meeting to suggest this, but you know, if members want officers to have further discussions with the applicant about the housing mix and how that then affects the overall viability case, and therefore could that raise the pot, that's something that we'd have to take away. But I think we have to determine this application as it's presented, and therefore the 190 in terms of total pot from an officer perspective has been robustly tested as the limit. How that 190 is then distributed is something that can be discussed, but the actual pot is the actual pot.
I'm still not clear whether any member of this committee could reach a different. Are you saying that we can or can't reach a different conclusion based on that? But when we're doing that in the same way that you have, you come down one way. Can we reach a different conclusion if we were so minded? And I say I've not made my mind up yet. I'm still listening to everything that's said. But I want to know what I can't do when I get to the final decision in half an hour's time or whenever it is.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I'm not answering your question succinctly. I think the bottom line is I'm not sure where the evidence for that rebalancing would come from. So I think it would be difficult to justify, would be my advice.
Councillor Hancock?
Thanks, Chair. I'm kind of following on Councillor Gillett's train of thought here, because to me, this is very much a compromise application. Now, ordinarily, and you said it yourself, this is almost the reverse of what we normally see, because obviously normally the weight of evidence is to come down in favour of a development, but this is one that should be as an exception because it's in countryside, so it has to meet the exception rules. And to me, and I'm not criticising the report, but I don't think the evidence is robust enough for us to come to a decision. We have got contradictory information from the different housing needs assessments, which, as you say, that happened before in Dronfield, but again, there's disparity here. So I don't see that we're robustly evidencing that point A is actually being met. We've got what is quite clear, and I know it's been referenced that Councillor, is it Cornwell? Cornwell, I'm never sure on the name. Apologies, Susie. Referenced in terms of the vehicle movements, but again, anything that's telling me, a report that's telling me that there are going to be 50% car movements versus the amount of housing, clearly is not accurate. I don't need anything else to tell me that. That's common sense. We've got the whole issue around the ecology report, and I will just pick up on a word that you used there, and when you said about Section 106 and you talked about benefit, but Section 106 isn't benefit, Section 106 is mitigation for impact. And we have heard quite significantly about infrastructure issues which are happening in terms of flooding, road development, the school. So to actually be saying that we are offsetting by a significant reduction, more than a third, we're almost talking 25% of what we think is legitimately needed. I'm really struggling to get my head around how you're saying that this balance, which is actually going to add pressure onto the location, is actually being mitigated by accepting a significant reduction. So, not to say, and again, like Councillor Gillett, my mind still isn't made up, but I'm not seeing a report that is strong enough to offset the various questions that I have, because, as I say, the decision I've got to make here is that this is an exception to the norm, not the default where we should actually find in favour of it. So, really, I need those inconsistencies ironing out to come to a decision.
Thank you. Councillor Foster. Oh, did you want to reply to that? Sorry. Have you got any reply to that? This question stops. Was there a specific question?
Well, it was. There are too many inconsistencies. Why are they? And we need answers to be able to come to a decision. Or I do personally.
Right, thank you, Councillor Hancock. I'll just pick up on the affordable housing bit for the moment. So there are two reports in that the housing needs assessment is kind of local plan evidence based. So we have referred to that in the report, I think correctly, because it's a source of evidence around housing need. The applicant has done their own survey, because that's the survey specifically is a requirement of LC3. And without going too far back into the Unston, because we're obviously looking at this application, but the legal advice that we had at that point was it's about taking, if there's more than one piece of evidence, you need to have regard to those and then make a reasoned judgment on the basis of that different evidence. So, you know, undoubtedly the two results are quite different. One is looking at 10 a year, one's looking at a range of 19 to 29. So the report has then gone into the differentials between the reports in terms of those two bits of evidence, in terms of their age is basically similar, there's a few months between them. In terms of the levels of response rate, obviously the housing needs survey submitted by the applicant was purely this parish, but that had a response rate that was higher than the housing needs assessment for the whole district. And so there are certain factors that give that housing needs survey from an officer perspective enough credibility to say, well, that is an evidence of need. The purpose of referring to the housing needs assessment was just to effectively try and qualify this point around, you know, is there a need for this site? Because I think some of the comments that have been made in representation of the application have raised concerns about how this housing needs survey was done in terms of the level of response and that type of thing. So trying to use the two pieces of evidence together and come to some kind of reasoned halfway point, if you like, to try and demonstrate that there is a demonstrable need for affordable housing. There is demonstrable need for social rent housing at a parish level. And then going to the rest of policy LC3 in terms of as the agent referred to, are there available alternative sites? And I think also importantly, what is the forward plan for Homewood in terms of delivering that need going forward? Because that's over a 20-year period. Those figures per annum are over a 20-year period. So how else would that be delivered? So the long and short of it is, we feel that there's a strong evidence base around the need for affordable housing. There is then the issue of how you look at the mitigation, correct, in terms of the Section 106 agreement. And this is where officers were having discussions with the applicant about changing the mix, potentially including some market housing, because policy LC3 does allow that outside the green belt. So you could have had a policy compliance situation there that, I mean, without running the modelling, we don't know, but might have resulted in a Section 106 contribution. But the issue is there is still that significant need to be met, and that, in terms of there not being reasonably available alternative sites to meet that need at a parish level, that does give us a real issue in terms of how else could that need be met.
Thank you.
If I could just say a few words on the highway, the transport assessment that was submitted. So the transport assessment that was submitted originally was based on 64 dwellings, and that gave those figures of 29 two-way trips during the morning and 26 two-way trips at PM peak periods. So this scheme is for 59. So the Highways Authority have reviewed that information, and they agree that the methodology that's been used is an acceptable approach. And I think for officers, we look to get a better design scheme, which meant that the scheme was narrowed down in numbers. And I think we've got a better design scheme that will sit better and kind of relate better to the settlement. And on the ecology report, I think the original ecology report did have its shortcomings, that they were rectified in technical updates and then reviewed by Derbyshire Wildlife Trust, who raised no objection and recommended a number of conditions, such as dealing with, the potential for great crested newts, the knotweed, dealing with stuff like that. And, the scheme can deliver the 10% BNG, which is required, but it's likely to be an off-site contribution, and that's an acceptable approach that the government allow. So hopefully that is helpful.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, just as a clarification, I appreciate what you're saying, and I appreciate what you're saying about the traffic report, but where you have, irrespective of whether it's 59 or 64 homes, there is no way in a million years that there are only going to be 29 traffic movements. We know on average there's something like 1.2 cars for every household.
But that's at peak times. We have to remember that data that's in the transport assessment is trip generation during peak periods. It's not throughout the day. It's at peak times that's considered in the highways report.
Yeah, to me it just doesn't ring true, but yeah.
Councillor Foster.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. My question is for Mr Thompson, and it's based around, although I'd happily hear it from Mr Cooper as well. It's based around policy LC3, which is what this application is relying on. We know it's already outside the settlement development limit. We know it's in countryside, so it's already against policies SS2 and SS9. So we are relying on the policy of LC3. Now, we've heard from the agent's of the opinion that all the criteria has been addressed, fulfilled, and that it complies with it. So my question is, when it comes to us deciding on whether we follow officers' recommendations and follow evidence and policy, rather than not liking this and finding something in policy to actually oppose this, what I'd like from officers is clearly to go through the elements of LC3 and how each one's been addressed or not been addressed, which one it may fail on, which ones it's close to, which ones it completely fulfills this application. It's not a huge job to do that because there's not many. So we know it's relying on LC3. That's what the agent said. Now, if it comes to it, and this committee is minded to find a way to oppose this, and then it goes to appeal, which I can imagine it doing so, based on what I've read so far, we need to be clear already here We all need to be clear on exactly which ones have been fulfilled, which ones are closed, which ones are near, which ones it doesn't meet. So I've given you some time to think about it there as I've rambled on. So if we go through policy LC3 and give us some advice on the individual elements there, which have been fulfilled, which aren't. Thank you, Chair.
I'll certainly start. So we're focusing on part 1 of LC3, and so A relates to the evidence for affordable housing need provided through a housing needs survey. I mean, I'm happy to talk a bit more about that, but obviously I've given some information already. But in short, we consider that to have been satisfied because the applicant has provided a local housing needs survey with their application, and for the reasons I was talking about earlier in terms of backing that up with a need from the housing needs assessment that the council has commissioned, there is a local need, so we consider that to have been met. In relation to B, again, the applicant has provided information in respect of they've done a site search. The agent talked about that in terms of the sites that have been discounted because they were smaller. That is a reasonable justification in the sense that where there is a demonstrable need for the number of houses being put forward, if the other sites that are available are too small, then that is a legitimate consideration from an officer point of view, legitimate reason to discount it. The officer report talks about the allocations that are in Homewood and where they're at, and the long and short of it is, given that this is a identified need over a 20-year period, there isn't sufficient sites left within Homewood to meet that need. And in terms of the emerging local plan, that is at a very, very early stage. It's too early to be giving weight to what allocations might come forward in this parish as part of that local plan. So for that reason, we consider that B has been met. In relation to the size, type and tenure, there has been some comment in respect of 4-bedroom properties which are not included in the application. However, what I would say is there is a demonstrable need for 2 and 3 beds which this application would be delivering. So I think there is a need to focus on what is being provided versus what is being proposed versus the merits of what might otherwise be proposed. You know, in terms of this application, it is meeting an identified need in that respect. It's close, it has a close association to the settlement development limit in that Graham will have to remind me of the directions, but effectively it borders the settlement development limit, and the landscape impact is obviously assessed in the report in terms of we consider that to be a suitable impact. Homewood is a level 2 settlement, so in terms of that between level 1 to 3 complies with that element, and the point E in terms of being to meet a local need. I mean, specifically that will be pinned down in a Section 106 agreement should it be approved, but linked to my previous points about local need, we consider that that has been identified, so it would be possible to meet criteria E through a suitable 106 agreement. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Can I just ask a couple of points of clarification from that? First of all, in terms of the need for 4-bedroom properties, I hear what you say. Do you know what the level of overcrowding is in Homewood and the actual need for 4-bedroom properties? Because obviously if you were to build 4-bedroom properties, that opens up the potential of people in 2 and 3-bedroom properties moving into a property that is more suitable to their need, and therefore would increase the supply of 2 and 3-bedroom properties. And secondly, in assessing the actual existing supply, can you reassure me that these figures that are being used include the development at Earls Park, which is technically in North Wingfield, but just across the road on Tibshelf Road from Homewood, that have been acquired by this authority at a previous meeting just before Christmas, I think, 39 properties, and under the choice-based letting system, priority is being given to residents and parishioners of Homewood over and above everybody else. Has that been taken into account? And if it hasn't, does it affect what's being said today?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Gillett. So on the second point, my understanding is the scheme off Tibshelf Road was approved in, was it 2018 at appeal? Something around that time? Was that when it was allowed?
I don't know.
Well, I do know, yeah, so those 39 dwellings were the affordable housing on that site. So they were the the proportion of that development that were allocated as affordable, and they've been taken on by Rignall Homes. That is my understanding.
That's the first half of my question, because sometimes we're in danger of talking about apples and pears. We keep talking about Homewood and Heath Parish. Those houses are located in North Wingfield Parish, but under the choice-based letting system when the decision was taken. Priority, I understand, will be given to parishioners from Homewood and Heath over and above any other applicant. That's why I'm asking, even though they're in the wrong parish, as it were, they still potentially affect this decision. Has that been taken into account?
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I think we can't guarantee that in terms of the granularity of that level of who's occupying which site. But what I would say, though, is that the need that we were just talking about in terms of that which has been demonstrated on a parish-based level is over a 20-year period, and therefore the numbers that we are talking about, you know, would not be captured in terms of, you know, realistically where we are with the emerging local plan. We're some way off being in a position where we could give any weight to any potential. We don't even have potential allocations at this point. We're still working towards that. But once you know, we are some way off that. When you add to that build-out times, the reality of what we consider to be a robust demonstration, and 15 as that sort of midpoint is the lower end of the spectrum. I mean, that appeal, we could well face an argument from the applicant that actually there's evidence of much higher need than that from the applicant's local survey, which had that range of 19 to 29. And if you take that level of need over a 4 or 5 year period, you know, there's clear justification for a scheme of this sort of scale to meet that local need. So exactly where other elements have gone, I think, to be honest, doesn't really change that position.
Thank you. Any further questions for officers?
Again, in answering that question, do you want to just go back to the 4-bedroom side of the question as well?
Yeah, sorry, Councillor Gillett. So, yeah, I think that the reason for the scheme not providing 4-bedroom dwellings will be for the RP and the developer, and they've put that forward. And I think it's important to remember the housing needs assessment. It is a strategic kind of overarching kind of document, and that it's not a prescriptive kind of site-by-site requirement. And this scheme is weighted towards 3-bed, but it still provides a good range of 1, 2, and 3-bed units that there is a demonstrated need for.
That's my question. Then. You're the experts, I'm not, so I'm asking the question, does our housing need assessment identify a need for 4-bedroom properties in that parish, and is that need being met as part of this? Because obviously the tenure type, et cetera, is part of what the criteria.
So I think in the housing needs assessment, it's quite a complicated and long document, and I'm not a policy planner, but you know, my understanding is that kind of breakdown is perhaps not looked at a very local level, at a kind of Homewood level. It's looked at more of a kind of sub-area level, from my understanding, but you might be able to correct me. I haven't got it open in front of me at the moment.
If I can just building on what Graham has said in terms of the, I think the answer around LC3 and why a local housing needs survey is required is because that is the evidence that should be provided by an applicant that focuses on the parish within which the site is located. So I think the housing needs survey is the critical element. Like I say, I think it was right that we referred to the housing needs assessment that the council has done in respect of, you know, validating this point about is there a demonstrable local need. But just going back to the policy requirement is there a local need within the parish, and is that demonstrated by is that supported by an up-to-date local housing needs survey? I think the only way to answer that question is yes, in respect of what the applicant has provided, what the backup evidence from the housing needs assessment says, and also what the housing officer at the council has said. So I think overall the position is that there is a clear need for the type of affordable housing that is proposed in this application. There may well be need for other types of affordable housing, but in terms of assessing the merits of this application, there is a need at a local level in the parish for what was being put forward.
Thank you. Councillor Peterson.
Thank you. I can accept the reason of why we need the houses, but having got that far, how are they going to get them built? Because having been out on that site this morning, that road is not wide enough for the kind of construction vehicles and transport that's going to be needed to get the building stuff there. These buildings that come along with the huge cranes on the back to take materials off, how are they going to get it up that road? Are you going to block the road off from residents? Because you'll not get the lorries up there if there's any cars parked there. And they're going to have to go on those pavements. So are the applicants going to repair that road and the pavements when they're finished? Have you got that down? Because they really will need to.
Thanks, Councillor Peterson. So the Highways Authority have considered the application. They don't find that there's a severe harm to highway safety or the road network. And as part of that, they've requested quite a detailed construction management plan condition. If you look at condition 12, it is a little bit more robust than the usual CMP that we put on some permissions, and included in that is a highway condition survey, so before and after development, so that the necessary recourse can be made with the developer to make those roads right. Hopefully that answers it. That would be separate, so that's a separate matter.
Councillor Lacey.
Thank you, Chair. Like Councillor Peterson, access was the first thing that struck you on our site visit this morning. It's all on-street parking, and I think that there needs to be off-street parking there, because I couldn't sleep at night knowing that emergency services couldn't get through to these new houses because there's a dozen cars parked in that little stretch. It's quite simple, really. So could we speak to the agent and the applicant regarding them properties and getting them some off-street parking?
We can do that, but that doesn't form part of the planning application. And I think it's important to note that some houses do have off-street parking on that road. I appreciate there were cars parked on the road when we visited the site, and that situation has been considered by the Highways Authority, and that's why we've got a construction management plan, and we've also got the hours of construction condition that's included in the proposed decision.
Councillor Gillett first.
I just want to make sure that I actually understand the policy on the last question I asked, so I'm fair to everybody in terms of how I apply the facts of the policy. And obviously LC31C says they are of the size, type, tenure and occupancy and costs, etc., etc. Have I understood you correctly? As long as they meet some of the need, that's all that's necessary. If there was a need for 4-bedroom properties and they didn't meet that, that's not a relevant criteria. Is that what you've said? And if it isn't what you've said, again, I still would like to know what the need is for 4-bedroom properties in the area as well.
Thanks, Councillor Gillett. So I think what we have to remember is that this scheme is not the silver bullet to all affordable housing across the whole district, across that area, across that 20-year period. This is just a very small scheme, and it's making a very important contribution to 1, 2 and 3 bed properties. You know, if we ask for one 4-bedroom property, then it would, strictly speaking, maybe meet that, but it still makes a very important contribution to the affordable housing delivery in that area.
Well, one of the things we're being told is that this is the only scheme in town, that there's nothing else available, and that's one of the reasons for granting this scheme.
So, if we look at 7.11 of the report, that kind of covers other sites that are under construction, under consideration and being built out at the moment in the settlement for Heath and Homewood. I'm not aware of any other potential sites within the settlement that could potentially accommodate this scheme at all. Yeah.
I understand that, which is why I want to be I'm trying to clarify, is this the only opportunity, if there was an opportunity to have 4-bedroom properties, and if it is the only opportunity, is that a material factor that I can take into account or the committee can take into account? If the answer to that is no, I won't take it into account. If the answer to it is yes, then I will. And again, I don't know what conclusion I will reach, but it's something I need to know, to be fair to all parties, whether it is something I can consider.
I think what this comes down to, Councillor Gillett, is this is a need over a 20-year period. So, no, it can't be, and this is why I made the point about assessing what is in front of us in terms of, is that meeting an identified need? Linked to Graham's point, it won't meet all of the identified need. The point about what other alternatives are there now is that there aren't other sites allocated either within the settlement development limit or that could be fairly compared to this site in terms of its landscape impact or whatever. But in terms of meeting the need, because that's over a 20-year period, that could well be met in other ways in future applications, which is why a lot of the evidence around need is at either a sub-region within the district level. It's broader than a parish level, which I go back to my point about why a housing needs survey needs to be submitted with each application for this type of exception site, because there has to be robust evidence rooted in the parish of the application site that demonstrates that there is a need, and it does demonstrate that there is a need here. All type of need might not be being met now, but the 20-year period comes into a factor of basically saying it doesn't have to now.
The answer is, as long as it meets some of the need, then that's the only factor I can take into account.
Because it's a justified need, yeah.
Councillor Foster, do you want to come?
Thank you, Chair.
I'll bring you in, just up to Councillor Foster.
You'll be pleased to know this is on the same subject that Councillor Gillett's mentioned about 7 times, so I'll join in with the 8th. Yeah. So it is LC3 1C. I can tell you how I've been on the planning committee 7 years, and I've looked at this many times, this policy and this element, and I can say how we've looked at it before. So it says there are the size, type, tenure, occupancy, and cost suitable to meet identified local needs. I'll be corrected by officers on this. How we've looked at these before, if there's a need in an area for 1, 2, 3, 4 bedroom houses, and in this case it meets 1, 2, and 3, it meets needs. It doesn't say it has to meet all needs.
That's the question I've asked.
Yeah, it doesn't meet all needs.
Yeah, fair enough.
So let's say we have this application, another application, and another application. One of them might meet 3, 4, 5 beds. One might meet only 4 beds, and this one might meet 1, 2, and 3. So what an application has to do, a proposal has to do, is exactly what it says there, is meet identified local needs. Not all of them, but some of them. There might be a need for something really obscure, and it might not meet that at all. Now, it's not just how we should look at it, it's not how I've looked at it in the last 7 years, but this is definitely how a planning inspector will look at it at appeal. So when we consider, if you're considering opposing this, consider that when it comes to your proposal to oppose it. That's got, just hear me out. That's got to be a consideration, because that's exactly what the applicant is listening to right now, and that's exactly what the agent will do when they put it to the when they put it to appeal.
Which is why I pushed the officers
Thank
for
you, Chair.
clarification, so I know what I can and can't.
I've helped as well. Thank you.
Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Chair. So looking at the plan on page 47, it shows something we discussed at the site visit. I don't know whether everybody can see this on the report, but there's an area at Edge Blue which this council owns. And I asked a specific question this morning as, have we made any commitment to sell this land or offer it to the developer or not? I wonder, is it legal for us to ask for a planning condition whereby some of that land could be surfaced to an appropriate standard and used as a temporary car parking arrangement for the local residents on there who have no on-site parking, so they can park their cars during the day and during the course of the development, it'd be made secure for them, and then the developer could finish off there when they've done the most of the site. Is that possible?
Well, thanks, Councillor Baker. So that doesn't form part of the application, but we also haven't agreed to sell the land, so that might form part of their construction management plan. That might be something that we might want to discuss outside of this forum with the applicant.
I always understood that you had to show area edge blue because the authority might want to put a condition on it. Is that not true?
Apologies. So that plan at figure 10 is just me trying to just provide clarity on our land. Maybe I shouldn't have chosen blue, so that might have been a bit confusing, but that just highlights the land that we own. That's all. It's just serving a purpose of that. It's not what they've submitted as their location plan.
Well, from my point of view, I'm becoming to be convinced that the legal position is we've really got to sort of look to approve this application, but that's not making a resolution. But I'm just trying to mitigate the loss of amenity through practical steps for the residents who we've all seen this morning are going to be impacted, those that live on that street particularly. I'm looking for a way forward, really.
David?
Yeah, if I can, Chair. Yeah, thanks, Councillor Baker. I mean, I think in fairness that is something that we can take away. It's how we do that resolution-wise, if you like.
Yeah.
But if members were minded to, I was going to say if members were minded to approve, delegate that discussion. I suppose it's then reporting the out. It's how we report the outcome. So whether it's deferred, pending that discussion. Just bear me 2 seconds. So just discussing it with Graham there. So condition 12 at the moment relates to the construction management plan. One thing that we could do is discuss with the Estates, obviously as the relevant department in the council, whether the council could facilitate an additional point to that condition 12, which referred to temporary parking arrangement on that land, and it would be delegated from committee to myself to have that discussion. If that discussion was positive, then a decision be issued. If it was negative, then it could be referred back to committee. That's a potential.
That answers my question.
So I think that's really helpful, actually, as a factor to take into account. But the problems for that little stretch of Central Street will continue after the development as well, because I think I counted 2 properties without any off-street parking. And so even if it's just temporarily, it will sort it temporarily, but for some people there's a permanent problem here, and for people accessing it with parked cars regularly there, and I suspect there's more than 2 cars there on a regular basis. So the land is in the council's ownership, so there might be some longer term solution there as well with that. So that's just a thought. The question I wanted to ask, actually, you talked earlier about the Section 106 funding and how the profiling of it in the report might not be right if the application was granted. Do you just want to expand on that further?
So on the Section 106 bit first, my point was really that if members had a particular view on how the 190k was to be spent, and that was different to how it's been discussed in the report, then that's something that we can obviously consider, take away and you know, amend, basically there be an amended heads of terms. The issue would arise if that 190 was to be increased, because the applicant's not going to agree. So that was that point. I think in terms of the parking situation, I mean, the reason why I think we definitely can take away the temporary scenario is because that would, you know, I think we can all see that would be a significant alleviation to the construction phase of the development. The challenge that we've got, and that would seek to hopefully alleviate, is that we can't refuse a planning application because of the temporary, which you know I know, but I just think it's important to air it because it doesn't mean it's not a legitimate concern of local residents, but we couldn't refuse the application for that reason. So I think we can definitely take that point away. I mean, I've no problem with adding to the discussion, can there be something more permanent done? Obviously that would just be a different element, and what we can't do is seek to address existing problems that predated the development through the planning process. So there's just that distinction there. But we can include it in the discussion, no problem.
Thank you. Right, if there's no further questions for officers, I'm going to open the floor for debate. Who wants to start it off? Nobody? Well, I'm happy to start it off. Now, I'm struggling with this application about it. We haven't got really much on policy that we can defend it on. But I'm not happy with the fact that, even though it's been answered several times about the 4-bedroom properties not being constructed, and I understand that, but it's still, with the mitigation that's in place of the 106 monies, it's just going to put more and more of a burden on the residents of Owenwood, which are on the area in general, without mitigating those issues. And it's a shame we can't put more weight against them. And then we've just got this policy LC3 that we can't defend against that, unfortunately. From what we've got in the report, we're really struggling. But I am struggling to say, yes, great, I'm all for social housing, but I'm not convinced this is the right location. And I wish another site could come forward that could supply this, because I don't personally think this is the right location at all. On highways grounds, even though I know we can't defend that because it says in the report it's acceptable. And I feel very much as a committee we're having our hands tied by policy that's not really looking after the residents. And that's what I'd like to say on this application. So, Councillor Hancock.
Thanks, Chair. My views are similar to yours, I'll be honest, although if I'm truthful, I'm less convinced that the policy criteria are being met than is being portrayed to us. I think some of them we are stretching credibility to make them fit, and they're not as clear-cut one way or the other. And the mitigations are a factor in that. We do need to make sure that it's there, and to me they're just nowhere near being met. So I'm not comfortable that the evidence that we have is sufficiently sound to actually support the application. I'm equally not certain that it's sufficiently sound to reject it. So I personally would be happy to look at a deferral while additional information came to us, and while there was possibly a renegotiation of Section 106 to look at mitigation. But as it stands, the evidence there is not robust enough to approve it.
Thank you, Councillor Hancock. I'm sure there's somebody else wants to join in this debate. Councillor Gillett.
I've listened to what Councillor Hancock said, and I think I'm in agreement with him. And in particular, with the 106, it would be useful, I think, to have more information from the county as to the pressures on the two schools, and whether giving them all a little bit makes no difference to any development at the school and alleviates no problems, whereas concentrating perhaps on one might tip the balance, and that might help sway me on that particular issue. And also some clarification regarding the other issues. I hear what the officers have said, and I will weigh those in the balance in the way they've advised me and reach the conclusion that they've told me I have to reach on those. But I would feel more comfortable with a bit more evidence behind that before I put my hand up in support of it.
Thank you, Councillor Gillett. Councillor Foster.
Yeah, the committee could defer it, but, you know, I think you're clutching at straws, really, when it comes to this. You're not asking for that much more. It'll come straight back to committee with some fresh information on 106. You know, and that's what... So, I'm not fully on this committee anymore, so I won't sit in front of this again. But when it comes back here, you'll have to make the same decision. You know, it's been recommended by officers. It's one that will, this is the debate part, obviously. This is one which will easily go to appeal. It's a bigger cert than septic that this will go to appeal. And not only will it get through, in my opinion, at appeal, it'll also be awarded costs as well, something like this, something as clear cut as this. Hear me out. It's not a debate, this. So you could well defer it, or you could even find a reason to actually oppose it and not approve this application. You'll get residents which are very pleased and happy for a short period of time, and your colleagues which you've supported for a short period of time. After that, it'll hit appeal, and then we'll be faced with costs. So we've all been here before. I've been on as long as you, councillor. So we've seen this many times before. When councillors are interested in opposing developments like this, the preparation you have to do is preparing your own traffic impact assessments. It's preparing your own evidence and bringing that evidence to this committee to support opposition in policy. It's difficult, which is why I gave the councillor time earlier to try and give us some evidence, because that's what will be looked at here, and it's what will be looked at appeal. It's evidence you need to support opposition to policy, to actually refuse something which we don't agree with officers on. It's that what you need. We've been here many times before, and you need evidence to go against a policy. You can't make it up on the spot. So yeah, you may well defer it, but you'll be faced with the same thing when it comes back. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Gillett.
Obviously, I defer to Councillor Foster when it comes to making inappropriate or unreasonable decisions. His knowledge of that is much greater than mine. I'm relatively new to this committee. It's not about whether I'm for or against it at this stage. I've heard everything that the officers have said. It's about making sure that we do everything right. And if I do put my hand up, for example, to grant this, that there's a full explanation to the community as to why I've done that and why the committee has ultimately granted it. In terms of the 106, it's about getting the right outcome for the community as well. And from the information I have before me, it's disappointingly small, but I understand why it's disappointingly small. So it's using it to the best impact for that community as well. And that's why I'm looking for additional information. If that can be provided today, I'll gladly take it into account and make a decision. If it can't, then I'd sooner wait a month or whatever it is and come to the right conclusion rather than just rush something through today.
Right, I'm opening the floor to motions then, if nobody else wants to contribute to the debate. Anybody want to put a motion forward?
Chair, I move that we defer pending to give the opportunity for a more robust traffic assessment to look at an increased 106 contribution, because we aren't mitigating, and that is an important factor of it. I don't agree with that it does meet LC3, but I can see that the argument is probably going to be lost on that one, so but I think certainly in terms of those two aspects, I think we can defer on that and look to that, so I'm happy to move that.
Right, have we got a seconder for that motion?
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Lacey. Right, we'll put that.
106 and the options available to us, but also in terms of need as well, if that can be looked at in more detail, just to reassure us. I've heard what's said, but I'd still like to know the information.
Okay. Sorry? Yes.
And could we add my comment about the council exploring the possibility of providing some temporary parking for the life of the development on the land it owns, where it has influence, to help ameliorate the impact on the local people, please, as well as the discussions on the section 106.
Right, do you accept?
I'm happy to accept that, Chair.
Okay. Yeah.
Thanks, Chair. Just quickly, before members vote on deferment, no issue with any of the points that are being raised. I think I just want to highlight that the discussions around Section 106 agreement, in terms of the total value of the pot, if you like, part of that discussion will probably need to be whether including market housing in the mix would improve the viability position. So I just want to make members aware that that is something we're going to have to discuss, which is permissible as part of LC3, but I just want to be clear on that in terms of what might end up coming back. Thank you, Chair.
Can that also be looked at then, David, as part of the scheme? Yeah, you happy with that? Right, we have a motion and seconded, so we'll put that to the vote. that's everybody, isn't it? Right, thank you, members. That motion is carried. Thank you very much, and thank you very much for your attendance, everybody. Of course you can. Is everybody okay to continue, or would you like to have a 5-minute break? Or?
No.
Yeah, fine. Right, members, we were waiting for David to come back, but apparently he's not coming back. So we'll move on to item 6 on the agenda, which is NED/26/00082/MFL North Wingfield Central. The next application is in respect of land to the south of 205 Chesterfield Road at Elmwood. So I'm now going to hand you over to the planning officer, which I think you're doing this one, aren't you, Alice?
I am, yes, thank you. Can you hear
Thank
me
you.
all right?
Over to you.
Okay, just before I go through my slides, there is a late representation, which isn't really late, in that I should have put this into the report. It's an objection from Councillor Cornwell. I'm just going to read a summary of what she had written. Yeah, yeah, I'll do that first, and then we can, if necessary, it can be discussed. So her key concerns were traffic and parking. The proposal includes 191 car parking spaces, which is considered excessive relative to typical attendance, around 150 people. She's concerned about large volumes of traffic arriving at the same time, disrupting daily life in Homewood, risk of road congestion, unsafe parking and spillover parking in the surrounding areas. With regard to impact on environment and wildlife, increased traffic is expected to negatively affect wildlife and the nearby Five Pits Trail. With respect to large events, concerns regarding an annual event of up to 750 people, doubts about whether the church can physically accommodate this number, uncertainty about parking, crowd management and overflow arrangements, lack of detail provided in the application about how such events would operate. With regard to the over 55 housing, no clear evidence provided for the need for over 55s accommodation, concern that the apartments may be too expensive with limited meaningful affordability despite a 20% affordable housing commitment. Impact on local residents. Although located in North Wingfield Parish, the impact would be felt mainly by Homewood residents. Perception that local residents bear the impact without sufficient benefit. With regard to community opposition, she says that the developer's own consultation with the community results show strong negative responses to the improved access to the Five Pits Trail, the over 55s apartments and the church building design. Suggests that the consultation was ignored or treated as a formality. So overall, while the developer has shown awareness of local features such as the trail, ponds and fields, there is scepticism that the initial intentions may not be maintained during the construction and operation. So although not explicitly referenced in the application, the material planning matters raised in Councillor Cornwell's objection have been taken into account in the report. The officer recommendation reflects that impacts are considered acceptable or mitigated in planning terms. Officers also note that no objection comments have been submitted from any members of the public, with only one general objection relating to highways in the wider area, which doesn't actually reference this particular application, but was assigned to this application. So I just wanted to say that, and also to apologise for not having included that in the planning report. And then if we go on to the slides, please. Okay, so this application reference 26/00082 MFL is for the construction of 3 blocks of over 55s apartments and a church hall with associated infrastructure, including parking. 2 accesses will be formed from Chesterfield Road. Late representations have been received and are set out in the summary update report, which was circulated to members yesterday. Members are asked to consider an application which lies within the settlement development limit on a site allocated for housing. The report to committee explains that the concerns officers have about the siting and design of the church building and associated parking, and the policy considerations with regard to non-housing use of the site. Overall, though, officers are of the view that the benefits of new social infrastructure and housing for older people outweighs the policy and design harm. Next slide, please. The application site shown here in yellow is an approximately 1.79 hectares agricultural field located to the south of 205 Chesterfield Road. The site is in the parish of North Wingfield, although it shares a boundary with Homewood. The site is located west of Chesterfield Road. It bounds land around Lings Pond to the west and Five Pits Trail to the south. To the north is land to the rear of 205 Chesterfield Road, which has planning permission for 4 dwellings. You can see that at the top of that picture. Next one, please. This is the site red line location plan. The site is allocated in the local plan for housing. The application site was previously granted planning permission for 40 dwellings. However, no development appears to have been started, and as such it appears the permission has lapsed. The proposal would deliver 33 apartments, which would be restricted to people aged over 55. There is a shortfall of specialist accommodation for older people in the district, and this weighs in favour of the development. This is a site plan. The site layout is influenced in part by the head wall to the former open cast coal workings in the southern portion of the site. The church hall will be located to the northwest corner of the site, with parking between it and the highway. Access for this portion of the development will be gained from Chesterfield Road in the northeast corner of the site. Retention of a mature hedgerow on the boundary with the highway, green surfacing and tree planting will help to break up the expansive parking and soften its impact on the street scene. The 3 blocks of flats will be located in the southern third of the application site. Access will be gained from the highway in the southeast corner of the site. This access also forms a shared agricultural access to the land to the west. Next slide, please. The proposed church hall is of simple, almost agricultural design, which is based upon the first Plymouth Brethren Church in Ireland. It is laid out to a set design and dimensions based on congregation size. The building will be orientated on north-south access with a plaza to the south to make the most of the morning sunshine. The size of the building and this plaza limits siting options. Officers are of the view that the simple featureless design and setback location with large areas of parking does not represent strong frontage to the street scene. However, the mitigation proposed by the strong tree-dominated landscaping means that on balance, officers are of the view that the proposal is acceptable. The 3 apartment blocks comprise 2 blocks of 12 2-bedroom apartments and 1 block of 9 1-bedroom apartments. They are proposed to be finished in red brick, which is found frequently in buildings in the area. Windows, doors and frames are proposed to be bronzed iron anodised aluminium. The roof material will be a standing steam metal roof. The gables will have accented buff-coloured art stone accents. Officers are of the view that the apartments will represent a very modern design in an area which is characterised by a mixed street scene, but due to the high quality of the design and the materials proposed, it will represent good design which will not cause harm to the character of the area. Next slide. Following are some photos of the site. This is the current site entrance from Chesterfield Road, so that's looking sort of northwest from Chesterfield Road. Next one, please. This is the view from the footpath to the Five Pits Trail. Block 1 of the flats would be on the left here. The applicant has offered to improve the footpath access to the trail. Next one, please. And this is the view of the site, which is just beyond that dwelling on the right there, which is 205 Chesterfield Road. So local and national planning policy supports development within settlements and on allocated sites where it respects the character of the area. In this case, a mixed use of church hall and 3 blocks of over 55 flats are proposed on a site which was allocated for housing. Officers consider that, though the scheme will develop 33 instead of the 40 hoped dwellings on the site, this loss is outweighed by the delivery of specialist housing, for which there is a shortfall in the district. Delivery of new social infrastructure is also supported by policy, and as such, overall, it's considered that the principle of development is acceptable. The design and layout of the site is predominantly led by the specific requirements of the applicant for the church hall, and in some ways does not meet the high quality design requirements of policy SDC 12. However, officers are of the view that by use of good quality materials and soft landscaping, the impact of the building and a large area of parking can be softened. Any remaining harm to the character of the area is outweighed by the benefits of developing the remainder of the site for housing and the high quality of design of the proposed apartments. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alice. Right, we've got 2 speakers on this item. And the first one is going to be Jonathan Brown, the applicant. You've got 3 minutes when you're ready.
Do I press the left?
No, your microphone's on.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Jonathan Brown. I've lived locally with my family for the past 22 years, and I'm speaking today as a trustee of the Chesterfield Gospel Hall Trust, which is part of the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church. The Plymouth Brethren are a Christian community of more than 56,000 members worldwide, united by a strong commitment to family life and the teachings of the Holy Bible. I've come to appreciate what makes North East Derbyshire a great place to live and work. My family have put down roots here, and I care deeply about the future of our community. We have an existing Gospel Hall in Birkin Lane in Wingerworth, and also Littlemore in Chesterfield. Our church has been part of North East Derbyshire for many years and is much more than a place of worship. We seek to make a positive contribution to the wider community. You may be familiar with the Rapid Relief Team, a charity supported by our church community that provides care and practical assistance. RRT supports local organisations such as Ashgate Hospice and participates in community projects such as litter picking and environmental improvement initiatives. These activities reflect our desire to be good neighbours and make a positive contribution to the communities in which we live. For several years, we've been searching for a suitable site for a new church hall. Our existing facilities no longer provide the space required for some of our larger gatherings, and this proposal would provide a much needed facility that enables us to meet the needs of our congregation both now and into the future. What particularly appeals to me about this proposal is that it's a comprehensive scheme. Alongside the church hall, it will deliver 33 apartments for people aged over 55, helping to meet an identified housing need while creating a development that serves different parts of the community. The scheme will also provide wider benefits, including a new footway along the site frontage, as well as improving pedestrian connectivity to the Five Pits Trail. From the outset, we have sought to engage positively with the planning process. We appointed an experienced team of consultants, engaged with planning and highway officers, participated in an independent design review process, and undertook public consultation with local residents and councillors. I've been particularly encouraged that no objections have been raised by the local residents. I believe this reflects both the extensive engagement and the care that has gone into designing the scheme. Charlotte will speak next about the planning policy and technical issues. I respectfully ask you to support our high-quality, comprehensive scheme that I'm confident you will be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you. Do members have any questions? No? If you'd like to retake your seat, then please. Right, the next speaker on this item is Charlotte Stainton, the agent.
Thank you.
Over to you when you're ready.
Thank you. We're very excited about this project, which will finally bring forward this allocated site for mixed-use development. The site had permission for up to 50 homes back in 2014 and then 40 houses in 2020. The Council's housing need assessment identified a need for housing for the over 55s, and Jonathan has just explained their specific need for a new church hall. The officer report has confirmed that the principle of this mixed-use development is acceptable in accordance with your local plan. There are no statutory objections on issues of flood risk, drainage, ground conditions, trees, biodiversity, crime prevention, rights of way or highways. There have been no local objections. We understand the points raised by the Parish Council and local councillor in relation to traffic and parking, but we wish to reassure you that the Highway Authority have very closely examined the evidence of our highways consultant. This includes comparison with a similar church hall in Middlesbrough. We have provided detailed evidence on parking and manoeuvring, access and visibility, vehicle counts and speeds, trip generation and distribution, accident records, servicing, and sustainable travel. The table on page 81 of the report shows the proposed schedule of use for the church, and even on the busiest weeks, there would be fewer than 9 hours of meetings. although there will occasionally be weddings and funerals too. There will be 38 parking spaces for the apartments, that's 33 apartments, and 191 spaces for the church hall. Technically, this is over-provision of parking, but we wanted to ensure there would be no overspill. Following detailed discussions, the Highway Authority has specifically confirmed there are no justifiable grounds for highway objection. Your officers have commented on the high-quality design for the apartments. They did raise some questions about the siting and design of the church hall. However, the design review panel understood the thinking behind this, which we believe respects the countryside edge and enables us to keep the open green character of the site. For the majority of the week, the church car park will not be in use, which will enable grass to grow through the geogrid surface. There will also be large trees throughout the parking area. As part of their project, my clients are pleased to deliver 20% affordable housing, enhance the footpath link to the Five Pits Trail, construct a new footway across the site frontage, and make contributions to local sports facilities, including the Homewood Cricket Ground. The proposal includes the planting of 85 new trees, as well as extensive indigenous planting. We'd like to thank Alice for the proactive way she has considered this application. We have thoroughly addressed every point raised, and we are confident you can place your trust in the officer recommendation. We ask you please to support this high-quality scheme. Thank you.
Thank you. Do members have any questions for the Speaker? No? No, if you'd like to retake your seat.
Thank you.
Right, I'm now going to open it up to questions to officers. Anybody?
Right, so perhaps it's only fair that that's put in the public domain as well, so everybody knows. It won't affect the outcome, but I think since I asked a question, it should be made public. And that was just about the 106 contribution, on the community contribution generally. It's relatively low in this, and there's good reasons for that, but perhaps you could just explain publicly why that is.
So because the application is for over 55s, the County Council has not requested contributions for education, as it's expected that there wouldn't be children there. As a consequence of that, it's our view that we need to secure that probably through the Section 106. Because obviously it has to be people of that age living there, otherwise there could be an impact. So that's the main reason. Affordable housing is delivered through the scheme, and then the other issues are all dealt with. Yes, thank you, sorry.
And in terms of the local community, it's in compliance with our policy, or you didn't know of anything else that could be considered at the same time. I think that's what you explained to me, and that's what I was expecting you to say.
That's right. So the health, because it's under 50 dwellings, the DCHS, the doctor surgery, people that manage the doctor surgeries, have not requested any contribution. The Chesterfield Royal Hospital did make a request, but as was mentioned in the previous application, their requests are not so compliant. So we've had to, we have asked them, to justify it, but they haven't. So unfortunately we can't go any further with that.
I take all that on board. And then the other issue was in terms of crossing the road. We all had great difficulty crossing the road, and obviously this is a development for people of a certain age who are expected to live there due to the design of the house for the rest of their life, and therefore they will find it harder and harder, I suspect, to cross what is an incredibly busy road, even at a relatively quiet time. Do you want to just explain what mitigation measures were considered to help people cross the road there, also in terms of catching public transport as well?
So there are bus stops on both sides of the road. and they are proposing to put the footway along the front of the development, so that will increase connectivity on that side of the road. So hopefully, obviously not resulting in no crossing of the road, but reductions in needs to cross the road. The applicant has agreed to a condition for them to produce a road safety audit. If that brings up the need for other mitigation for this scheme, then that would be dealt with through that condition, and could include crossings if necessary, but it's subject to that road safety audit.
Okay, thank you.
Just to add into that, so I think when we went on site, you could see that it was quite tricky to cross there. So the provision of that footpath across the entire frontage is a real positive, and that will link in to other crossings that are further up the road in towards Homewood. So yeah, hopefully that covers what we discussed on site. Thank you.
Councillor Foster.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I note the reason for report that it includes the church element, and that's the reason for report, and that it's a departure from the development plan. Is there any particular part? I've read the report, and I've seen how many policies it refers to, but is there any particular part we ought to be concerned about with it being a place of worship?
The reason why it's a departure from the development plan is because the site is allocated for housing. So we felt that whilst housing will be delivered as part of this scheme, there is quite a large proportion of the site is going to be made over to the church, and our view was that that should be something that's considered by members. So that's the main issue. Are we happy that some of that site will be used for a use that is not that it's not allocated for? Having said that, it is providing housing in the form of the 33 apartments, and our view is that whilst that is slightly lower than the approved scheme that doesn't appear to have come forward and appears to have lapsed, it has benefits in that it's the particular specialist housing for the over 55s.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Cooper.
Thank you. I've noticed in the conditions, I don't see anything about times of construction works unless I've missed it. Is that in there?
It should be. If it isn't, I will add it.
I'm just conscious because I know that you said that there's potential for houses next door to it, and I guess which comes first.
So we're at condition 17, there's a construction management plan condition. So similar to the previous application, it covers quite a detailed kind of mix of matters. So parking of vehicles, advisory routes for construction, temporary access needs, unloading and kind of storage, etc. Hopefully that kind of meets what we need.
There's no timings on there, though, is there?
There is.
I think that when we considered the application, due to its location, it wasn't deemed necessary at the time. But if members believe that that is something that's really important in the decision, we can add that in.
I guess it depends what comes first. If there's houses there, then that could have an implication on the houses, I guess. Having not knowing what time how long these things are going to take, basically.
Yeah. I don't think there's any risk in adding that condition in this case. So I should make a note.
Any further questions for officers? I've just been looking at the report here. There's this part of Temple Normanton 7.22, which says this part of Owenwood and Temple Normanton is characterised by a mixture of mid to late 20th century housing. What I would say is I don't really think there is many three-storey properties in that area. Just what your thoughts are on that, and how we've come to that decision that the two-storey is more a better position than two. 3 stories better than 2. So it doesn't seem to be part of the street scene.
It's a combination of the boundary treatments, the landscaping, the fact that the blocks will be set back into the site, and how that's partially reflected on the business park on the other side, which are similar scale blocks set sort of back behind the boundary features, and that was what made me think that in this case the blocks of these size would not be that harmful. And there is a mixture in the street scene of both the housing further to the north, the housing on the other side of the Five Pits Trail, and then big industrial buildings. So there's the big industrial site to the south east, and there's that business park as well.
I think, Chair, it's also worth noting that the scheme went through quite an extensive design review as well.
It did.
So that considered the context and the scale of these buildings, and that came back positive.
Okay. And I've just got one last question. Do we think 191 car spaces is over capacity? Because we just seem to have, instead of having 40 or 50 houses on this site, we just seem to be building a car park.
That's something that has concerned me, and we've had quite a lot of discussion with the applicant about the number of parking spaces, necessity for the number of parking spaces, and how that impact of that expanse can be best mitigated. The applicant has put forward a case for needing that many spaces that whilst they don't expect big meetings very regularly, there will occasionally be times where they would need to fill that car park. So having, we did have a lot of discussions about it. It was discussed at the design review. It is something that, in my view, doesn't weigh that positively in the balance, but the work that the applicant and their architects have gone to try to soften that impact through landscaping, good quality landscaping. The tree officer has been involved talking about how we can ensure that a good methodology is used to actually plant those trees so that they survive. He's put a lot of work into that. So on balance, we've concluded that whilst I think ideally we would have liked to have seen the building on the road edge with the parking behind. From a design point of view, we have concluded that on balance this is acceptable.
For that number, I'm just trying to get clarity. Do we have to evidence base the need for that amount of parking? That's what I'm trying to get to, because I've not seen that in the report.
I think the thing is that they have shown that they need, I think it's slightly less than this, but not so much less that, for instance, you could put another block of flats, block of apartments on there. So the way that the site the way it divides up, there wouldn't really be any other use for those number of
Okay, I
spaces.
just wanted clarity on that.
I think, just to add into that, I think when we were on site, there was some kind of concern about cars maybe having to park on the road. So I think that, the applicant is probably thinking that they want to be good neighbours to the community and provide enough parking space within the site. And we've, like Alice has said, we've worked really hard with the applicant to try and green up that space to make sure it's not just a sea of tarmac.
Okay, Councillor Baker.
Thank you. Yes. Again, very comprehensive report. As we spoke on the site, we talked about the church actually having an agricultural feel to the building. Do you want to sort of elaborate a little bit more on that for the public listening to this?
The character.
Character of the building,
so,
which I thought, sorry, pardon,
Yes.
sorry, cut across you, which I thought was quite innovative and quite nice considering its location. But do you want to add a bit more to that?
Yeah, so the design of the building it's quite long and low, and it does have the character of a sort of agricultural barn, and the reason for that is that the church community that are proposing this church have a very standardised pattern for their buildings, and it's based around their original church in Ireland. I don't know if you will have seen the floor plan, but you'll see that it's built on a sort of circular. The bit that where everybody goes in to have the services. Apologies if I'm using the wrong technology, wrong words, but it's built in a circular pattern, and they can be quite small to big, but that means that the proportions remain the same. So you have a smaller building will be proportionately the same as the bigger one. And the simplicity is also to do with the sort of simple aesthetic and the ethos, exactly. Yeah, thank you. So one of the things, for instance, when I was first looking at this building, I was a little bit concerned that it felt quite blank and maybe not very friendly. But obviously, to the people for whom this is their church, that's going to have a completely different feelings for them, because this is their church that they go to and expect it to look like that, and they know what goes on inside it. So, you know, we did have a lot of conversations about, could it be changed? Could there be windows put in it to add a bit of interest? But ultimately, my feeling was that the justification that was put forward by the applicants, by the church, for why they wanted it like this was sufficient and robust and made sense. And that's why ultimately my thoughts were, well, we could have asked for, I don't know, some coloured panels or something, but actually, was that really necessary? And the fact that it's actually set at the back of the site at least does mitigate its impact from that point of view. It's not right on the edge with just a big blank elevation. So, you know, we've had a lot of thoughts and a lot of balancing about the design and the layout, but have concluded that on balance it is acceptable.
Thank you. Right, no further questions. I'm going to open the floor to debate. Anybody want to start at all? No? Yeah, Councillor Baker.
Yes. I'm happy to take the first comment on this one. Yeah, overall, on balance, I think it's a nice scheme. It's clearly a need for it. We have the Plymouth Brethren in Wingerworth, and we find them an asset to the community, and they get involved in the community. So I'm quite comfortable with Officer's recommendation, personally. Thank you.
Councillor Gillett.
I would echo that. I'm leaning that way as well. So the comments I'm about to make aren't really about the application. They're just two points I would like to make based on the early debate and today's debate. One is with regards to the Five Pits Trail, and it is very noticeable that the Five Pits Trail, to those who live in that community and the neighbouring communities, it's a walk through the countryside linking the heritage, the mining heritage of those villages, and that seems to be disappearing incrementally with every application that comes as it becomes a boundary between each development. And it's just disappointing that that's not been thought of in a broader sense, and each application has been looked at individually. As I say, that's just a comment that won't influence my decision today. And similarly with the 106 funding, again, I think that's unfortunately low, but there's good reasons for it, and that might require us, and perhaps even as an authority, and even some of the other authorities, just to reflect on that, because this is very different to the other applications we're dealing with. It's of its own type, as it were, and therefore excludes a lot of funding that would have gone, for example, to education if it had been different as part of the development. And so I think we should perhaps, as an authority, just think whether we review our own policy for development contributions as part of the draft local plan, and depending on the outcome of that, whether we suggest that to other agencies as well. But otherwise, I'm leaning the same way as Councillor Baker.
Thank you. Councillor Hancock.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with both of the previous two members. I think in terms of what Councillor Gillis just said about Section 106, it is a very different application. It's a very different setup altogether. So it has far less of an impact on its local area than the previous application did. Also, and again comparing here a little bit, this does actually meet the need. We've got an ageing demographic in North East Derbyshire. This is directing towards it, so it's meeting a need that we know we have. I think it's also sensible in the fact that it's applying them as apartments, and some of them are two-bedroom apartments. We're making good use of the space. Totally respect everything that Alice said about the design. If I'm honest, it's not my place to tell other people how to live, and if that's a design that suits them, I'm more than happy to do it, and it's not impacting anybody else. So if I'm truthful, I support this application anyway.
No further comment. Oh, Councillor Foster.
Surprise there. Thank you, Chair. I only normally speak on policy, on evidence, as you probably know, but I'm no longer a member of this committee. I'm here subbing. So I'll take the opportunity just to wish the applicant all the very best in spreading the Christian message. It's wonderful that a church has been built in Derbyshire today, so thank you very much for that. I know that's not a planning consideration, but it's one night only for me here, so thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Foster. Councillor Peterson?
Yeah, can I say that I like the idea of apartments. I think we don't build enough of them. We put houses all over the place, but we don't look at the demographics. We've got, as you say, ageing population, but you've also got a lot of single people who want apartments. They don't want a one-bedroom, two-bedroom house. They want an apartment, and we're not building enough of those. So it might be that you can push some of these developers into looking at the other demographics of the area and not just houses.
Good idea.
Thank you.
Right, thank you, members. Open floor to motions.
I'm happy to move that we accept Officer's
We'll go seconder for that. Okay.
Second it. Yeah.
Okay, we've got a mover and a seconder to accept officer recommendation. We'll now put that to the screens. Thank you. Right, thank you, members. That's passed.
No, we've still got the other bit on. We've got the appeals. No, there's not much.
Right, if we can move on, because I know we'll want to get home and cool off a little bit. We'll move on to item 8, planning appeals. Who's gone through this report? Is that going to be you, Graham?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I lost track of where we were. So there's been one appeal lodged. That's for a change of use in agricultural land to a domestic garden. That's at Ashover. So there's some concerns about character and appearance of landscape character and inappropriate domestic intrusion. So we'll see how that appeal goes. In the same time period, we had one appeal allowed, and that was some kind of details at I think it was at a barn on Stubley Lane at Dromfield. So it was in the setting of a listed building, and we pushed for, quite a high level of detail, whereas the inspector found there was no harm to the setting of a more diluted kind of level of detail on that one. Bit of a disappointing decision, but we'll take that on board and learn from that. So the appeal that's been dismissed, that's the agricultural building and storage on Matlock Road. So that was a good decision. So that's in the green belt. So there was harm to spatial and visual openness of the green belt, and there was very moderate benefit. So they didn't amount to very special circumstances. So that was a good decision. Good decision for us. And so good work from Colin on both of those appeals. And Stephen's got a battle on for the other appeal.
Okay, thank you, Graham. Anybody got any questions for that? Councillor Foster?
Yeah, if you can just add my congratulations to Colin as well, because they're great results, those. Yeah, so, thank you.
Yeah, good to see. Thank you very much. We'll note the report. Item 9, matters of urgency. Let's go and cool off.
I used to work for someone.